Hello students, this is Mr. Branham. I just want to talk a little bit about documenting sources today. And with this, just like with everything else in the course, I start with the idea that you have written arguments before, you have done research papers before, so a lot of this will be review. But I just want to make sure that you know how to document your sources correctly in MLA style. So with this, kind of the first thing I want to do is go over here. I made a very short PowerPoint, which you can view in the course content folder for the causal argument. But I call this documenting sources, a quick review. And the simplest way I can put it is that anytime you put a source into a paper, every time you put a source into an argument, do two things. First thing is to document the source and the text of your argument. So that's very important to kind of show your reader separation between your ideas and your evidence and that from sources. This is something we do to prevent charges of plagiarism and just a way of keeping everything honest, giving sources the credit that is due. So the first time you introduce your source, do so with a formal attribution. Formal attribution is where you have the attribution itself, which is giving the full name of the author and the full title of the source. Then we have the quote or the paraphrase, which you're probably pretty familiar with. Quote, of course, borrowing the exact words from the source and putting it in your paper in quotation marks, and paraphrase, of course, is translating the information from the source into your own words. So for example, we start with an attribution in the causes of bullying in schools. Ernesto Fairchild argues. So we have the full title in quotation marks. We have the author's full name. Then we have that verb there, he argues. And we do a quote. Bullying often begins at home. Children who come from families in which members are aggressive or abusive toward each other on a daily basis learn that this is normal and acceptable behavior. So there's your formal attribution with a quote. Then if you decide to paraphrase the same information, Ernesto Fairchild, author of The Causes of Bullying in Schools, states that children pick up bullying behaviors at home. So with this is the first thing you do, or thing one, when you put a source into an argument. Make sure you give the source credit in your paragraph. And this is one of those things that may not seem that it's terribly important now, but whenever you get into English 102, you'll get a lot more information about finding and documenting sources. So this is something we do when we are juggling multiple sources, so that we know what information comes from which source. Okay, so the first time you introduce a source, include the author's full name and the full title of the source in your attribution. But after the first formal attribution, you can attribute the source more informally, using the author's last name and an appropriate verb. For example, instead of doing the full author's name and title, you can simply have Fairchild adds, Fairchild continues, or Fairchild clarifies. So those again just signaling the change between your ideas and those of the source. But since we've already given the name and title, no need to do that over and over. It gets very repetitive. And we want to make sure that whenever you're using sources, they still flow very organically, very smoothly with the rest of your paragraph. So we use kind of different tools for variety, just to change things up. And one thing you can do with that is to move your attribution to different places in your sentence. It can go at the beginning, the middle, or the end. Then, of course, after your first formal attribution, you can even put the author's last name in parentheses following your quote or paraphrase. For example, let's say we have another quote from Fairchild, and he says, children who are used to rough play and fighting with their siblings at home will most likely bring this behavior to school, where they will learn it is not welcome. Then we open up some parentheses following the quote. We put the author's last name in there, and we have the period at the end. So notice that's kind of a picky thing, but MLA gets down to the details. So notice the impunctuation isn't at the end of the part that we're quoting, but it is at the end of the full attribution. L stands as one unit. Okay, so that's the first thing. Make sure that when you put a source into an argument, that you document it in your text. All right, thing two, second thing you do when you put a source into a argument or a paper is to put the source on a works cited page at the end of your paper. So we know about works cited pages. Those are those reference pages at the end of your document that have bibliographic information. If we need to kind of find the sources that you're using, we can look it up with the author or the title, those pieces of information. And if you look at either of your textbooks, writing arguments, or the handbook that you may or may not have bought for the course, there's details about setting up a works cited page. Also, I've probably told you about Purdue University's OWL page before, but here's a link, kind of a guide to setting up MLA style works cited pages that you can view if you want a lot more detail. So also, if you look in course content in the causal argument folder, you'll see that I've put up an example works cited page, which looks like this. So with that, you can use this as a pattern to follow. And as I mentioned in my documenting or accessing sources to the OCTC library databases video, you can usually get the citations on there. You just have to copy and paste them into your works cited page and get your format all adjusted, get everything looking good. But, here's some examples. So basically with the setup of a works cited page, we know that it's the last page in your document, and if it were, say you wrote a 5-page causal argument, this will be page 6, so you'd have your last name and the 6 there. Then we have the words works cited centered at the top of the page, like you would for a regular title on the first page of your essay. Then notice here we have a entry for each source that you're going to have in your paper. Notice that the full thing is double spaced, just like the rest of your MLA style document. And a little bit different, we use this hanging indent, which is a little bit different. So in kind of the opposite of a regular paragraph. So we know with a regular paragraph, the first line of the paragraph is indented 1 tab, and everything else is at the left margin. But with the hanging indent, we have the first line with the author's name at the left margin, and then everything else that follows is over 1 tab. So if you are having a hard time with hanging indent, I'll just show you really quickly here. We can just highlight this piece, and if you go up here in Word under this paragraph menu, so this box pops up, and you get this special indentation, and then hanging is the last one there in your option. So you can do this source by source, or if you want, you can type up all of your works cited entries, then just copy, or I guess highlight them all, go here to hanging indent, and it will get your format just right. Okay, so double spaced, hanging indent. Also note that your sources are in alphabetical order by author's last name. The reason we do this hanging indent is that you can kind of notice creates this kind of file folder, recipe card index shape to the works cited page. So if we look at your paper and you have a citation or attribution in there, according to Corey H. Boss, characteristics of the most viewed YouTube videos related to bullying, then I can go here, find the author's last name, and I have the full record with the web address in case I want to go check out that source for myself. Okay. And to just kind of break down the way these entries look, and again, something you'll learn in English 102 is that depending on the type of source, the works cited entry format is going to be a little bit different. But with the online database articles, they're all going to be pretty much the same. So we have the author's name. So just like back in library class, we have the last name, first name. We have the full title of the source, which in this case is an article. And note that article titles are always in quotation marks. Book titles, magazine titles, database titles, web titles. Generally those are going to be italicized, but in this case it's an article, so it will be in quotation marks. Then we have the title of the magazine in italics. Then we have the volume and the issue number for the source. We have the copyright year and the page numbers. So those will be pretty much the same regardless of which source you're using. You'll have author, title, source, volume, issue, date, and page number. Then the last thing there you'll see is the full web address or URL for that source, and that's there in case I want to check out your source. I can just click on that and it will go right to it. And notice with all these, they're all pretty much the same. There will be some variation if you have more than one author. It'll be a little bit different. If you have an editor instead of an author, that may be a little bit different. But you can check your handbook for those variations. And I might also want to point out that the format for a book is here as well. So if you can't find the articles that you're looking for in the library's databases, you can also look at any library in town. You can find books on your topic, and then also you can put those on your works cited page. So author's name, I guess in this case it's an editor, the title of the book, the publisher, and then the copyright year. So very simple for books. And I'll show you one more. So this is an example for an ebook or an electronic book, which you can also find through EBSCOhost or other databases through the library's website. But notice it's the same format as it would be for a regular book. Author's name, title, publisher. In this case we have the copyright year. We have the title of the database, and that's the date of access. This is a little bit older, but that's the date that I created this works cited page. And then just like before, we have the full web address, the full URL there to let your reader know where this source comes from. So, okay. And again, this is just a general introduction to documenting your sources, because hopefully you're all heading into English 102 next semester, and you'll get more information about finding and documenting sources when you get there. But I just wanted to give you some basics, because again, with this final causal argument for English 101, you'll be asked to find two sources for your topic, and with that, generally you're probably going to find articles, because those are easiest to access. But also if you want to use book sources too, that will be okay as well. And if you have any questions about any sources that you find, if you're having trouble finding material, please send me an email, and I'll do my very best to get you back on the right track. So, but I think that's enough for this video. So if you have any questions, send me an email at matt.branham@kctcs.edu. So good luck and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.